The Enlightenment philosophy continues today. The philosophy of the Enlightenment, developed in mainly the 1700s and 1800s, still exists today. What is this so-called Enlightenment? Well, it can be defined in the Encyclopedia Americana. And it says, Enlightenment, philosophy of the name popular given to much of the philosophical thought of the 18th century, which cut loose from superstition. Notice that, cut loose from superstition, and attempted to establish reason as the foundation of all belief and of all rules of conduct. What do you think the superstition is? And, well, that's the biblical worldview. They rejected the biblical worldview. They rejected the creation, the flood, the Tower of Babel, and they brought forth uniformitarianism. That's how it was born. And they brought in deep time. Of course, if you look at the rocks, like these rocks behind me, and if they were deposited slowly over millions of years, well, you got to have millions of years at that rate. Now, this philosophy started, like it said, in the 1700s and 1800s. There's precursors to it in the 1600s, but it really took off after 1800. Now, the Enlightenment is rather complex. Some of them, a number of Christian scholars were involved in it, but eventually the French Enlightenment took over, which is totally atheistic. And that's the way it is today. They rule the culture. The atheists rule the culture. They determine that you can only use uniformitarianism, slow processes over millions of years, to explain all the rocks and fossils. And that you can only use slow processes in biology to explain all organisms, evolution. So that's all you hear. Now, there's actually another way of looking at it. We know a lot more today than they knew back then. They hardly knew anything about science, especially geology, back then. The millions of years weren't substantiated by, or believed substantiated by, radiometric dating and starting until the 1950s. So they assumed all this without a lot of knowledge of science. And with a lot more scientific data, observations in geology and biology, it shows a different picture. But you got to tune your mind into that these are possible. It's possible to give another view of the observations of geology, mainly the types of rocks, the structures of them, how they alternate, faulting, things like these are observations. This is real science. Yes, uniformitarianism really is not science. Now, the Enlightenment said that they're going to use only human reason to determine everything. Well, how good is human reason? Looking a little history tells you that often it doesn't, we don't reason very good. Unfortunately, we produce biases and we run with them. And of course, there's been a bias against the Bible, Noah's flood, creation, the Tower of Babel for the origin of the languages, since about the 1800s. There's a whole different view of the rocks and fossils out there that show that uniformitarianism is a poor assumption, and we can explain them better from Noah's flood. There's abundant evidence out there, as will be shown in the northern Rockies of Montana.